Hello! I am not in my car eating donuts. I am in my, well, it's our guest bedroom. Was my son's bedroom. Well, it kind of still is, but he's off at college. We said goodbye to my oldest two a few days ago. Hard on a mom. But so I have, the house is quiet. Actually, my other two boys, my youngest two had, well, I was going to call them snow days, but there wasn't really much snow. It was too cold here in Wisconsin, so they canceled school for 2 days at the beginning of this week, and so I kind of postponed this project until today when the house was quiet once again. And so I'm eager actually to get back into sharing with you my songwriting process. And so I believe this is part 7, and I'm gonna plan to just dive right in. I took a few weeks break. First of all, sometimes during those campaign weeks, it's fun, but it's a lot of work putting together those emails, weekly emails and videos and such. And it's fun. It's a good season, but it's nice to have a little break. Plus, my family went to Arizona for over the New Year's holiday, and so my family, my sister's family, and my parents, we all vacationed there for about 6 days. Super fun to drive around. I just love driving around the southwestern portion of the United States. Just such beautiful geography and just so different from the Midwest. And so that was fun. We visited the Grand Canyon. Stunning, amazing. So my hands start to sweat every time I think about heights or am around them. Even talking now, my hands start to sweat. I don't know if this is a condition that can be fixed. It's just the reality. So I do not like heights, but the Grand Canyon was beautiful, and I would suggest you go there if you have the opportunity. Anyway, okay, so we're gonna dive right into songwriting, and I yesterday kind of thought through some things I could mention in this particular episode, and I came up with 5 things, and it's perfect timing because I am right in the middle. Funny thing, got a funny thing about that phrase, in the middle. I'm right in the middle of 2 brand new songs, and I got a little story about that a few weeks ago. It may not even been a full 2 weeks ago, but I don't know, guys. Some of you out there, I'm sure some of you out there are like me, where you're kind of a go-getter and you like to keep busy. And when all of a sudden the busyness stops, you struggle, like you really struggle. You're like, it's my, just whatever. Melancholy sets in. I think some of it has to do with the weather here in Wisconsin. It gets too cold, can't do a whole lot outside. Regardless of what the issue was, I was just like, Lord, would you please give me 2 songs? I didn't pray for just one. I like actually to work on songs in bundles. It's kind of fun to flip-flop in between. Whichever one you're kind of feeling it that day, you can kind of work on it. And so I specifically asked the Lord to give me 2 songs. I was just so eager to write. And there's, for you songwriters and creators out there, there's usually a ton of things you could write about. Things actually that you wish you could write about. But just nothing is coming together as a cohesive whole. And so I started praying. I started going through some of my lyrics in the past, other, thoughts I've had in the past of songs I would like to write. And so sometimes that helps kind of get your creative mind going. I like to write things that are just completely fresh on my heart. But that's not how it always works out. Sometimes it's a thought that God brings back to you. And so that actually is what happened on one of these songs. It's called "In the Middle of Our Story." And that was the phrase, "in the middle." I thought it was kind of cute. I'll share maybe more about that as I go through these. But another song came to me. I'm starting a new Bible reading routine, and so I'm going through the New Testament this year. I love the 5-day program. It's not overly strenuous. Not because I don't want Bible reading to be strenuous, but I honestly want it to just work with how my mind processes things and needs things to sink deeply, and have time and space for meditation on it too. And not just be like, go, 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 get through all this Bible reading. And so the other song, it's called "More Than a Man," and it's taken right from the story in Mark 4 about Jesus calming the sea. I love that story, and I think it's in all 4 Gospels, and it's so iconic. There's so much poetic thing. A lot of songs have to do with a storm. If you want to, a difficulty in life could be very compared to a storm, and so that just kind of connected for me, and I started writing some lyrics to that, and then started writing music. So I'm so thankful the Lord graciously gave me those 2 songs. I have actually another one that's kind of on the on a burner, maybe not the front burner, that I would love to do once I finish these. And finishing a song, oh my word, you guys, it takes a long time. The initial excitement, the words, the lyrics, all of that takes time. But then just sitting down and just plunking out every single note and every single measure is extremely time consuming. But I get so ambitious that I probably annoy my family because I bury myself here in this room and plunk away at my new songs. And so it's a very fun creative time for me. And kind of like once I get some of this creativity out of my system, I can take a break from it for a while. So all that, probably more information than you were asking for, but I thought it would be helpful for me to actually do these next however many songwriting videos in front of my piano, in front of my computer, so that you can kind of see kind of exactly how I do it. Well, I mean, you'd sit here for a long time if you're going to see exactly how I do it. But I just honestly, randomly, because I'm in the creative mode, came up with 5 things. I'm sure there's 15 more things that I could say, but for this time, we'll just stick with these 5 things. Trying to keep track of the times. We're at 6 minutes here. Okay. And as I go through it, maybe I'll play some ideas, talk through some ideas. We'll see if I can come up with some examples or whatnot. So number 24, can you believe we've already done 23 bullet points for this songwriting chat, these chats that we've done. But number 24, the creative process can be messy and disjointed. So it's hard to follow a pattern for each song. So I guess maybe all that to say is just prepare yourself. These 2 songs, it was so weird because I was going through, let's see which one it was. I think it was in the middle of my story. In fact, as we were flying to Arizona, we had like 4-hour plane ride, and of course I was sitting by my family and all of that, but we're kind of squished in there, and just like sitting there for 4 hours. And I like to be productive. I like to have some, if I'm going to read something, or maybe, I suppose there's times where I get on a plane and I'm like so tired I just want to sleep. But if I'm not, I want to do something. And so I actually did start going through some of my lyrics, and I remember pulling up the lyrics to the song in the middle of our story. And again, it was a song, a thought that had been on my mind from years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And I'm sure in an upcoming email I'll explain the song and what got me to write it. But so I started writing it, and previously I'd written some lines of poetry, but it wasn't really gelling. It was like, okay, I just wasn't sure where it was going. And it has to compel me. Like, there has to be some really strong punchlines, like, oh, you just kind of like delivered that line at just the right time and all that. So as you're in that process, you're like, okay, does this song hold all those features? Is it compelling enough and this and that? And so eventually I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? There's merit to this. It is actually saying things that I want it to say. But it doesn't happen right away. And sometimes I'll actually set it aside and be like, oh, I would love to finish the song, but I'm just not sure. And so you set it aside, you work on something else, or you just keep praying, I guess. And so it can be kind of messy and disjointed. It's not like some songs you start writing them and it just slides. And you sit down at the piano and that melody just comes. Not so with this song. In fact, I sat down one night, I'm going to pull it up here on my Finale program. I sat down one night, and I've deleted it since then, but I came up with a totally different tune for it. I don't have it in front of me, and I don't play by ear really, but so that scratch that. But I actually wrote down the melody and everything, and I'm like, okay, I love the beauty and the simplicity of that melody, but it's not really going anywhere. It's just not compelling. I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm just like, I don't know. So I sat down again, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just sit down at the piano and see if I can come up with a totally different tune that just is more compelling. Well, that's what happened. I came up with this tune. You probably can't hear all the lyrics, so pardon me, but dreary days and sleepless nights are scenes within our story. Joys restored and wrongs made right. New chapters keep unfolding. so I began to write down that particular melody, and I thought it was compelling enough to continue, and so I did. Let's see here. Mountain peaks are hard to reach, the still and silent aches, they ebb and flow in the lines and rows on every page. So that was the first verse. There is no chorus. Well, I guess the chorus, if you want to call it a chorus, comes in at the end. And I'll talk about form in just a minute. So as I was writing out this melody, I thought, you know what? It's like a fairy tale simplicity. And that's what I wanted it to be, because the title says in the middle of my story, it's all about like a story. So I kind of think of it as a, story time, not too heavy, not too sophisticated, etc. So it was so parts of this were disjointed. And I know the last time I had one of these songwriting chats, I don't know if it was the last time or the time before that, but I'm said you need to get your piano intro down before you, soonish when you start to write your actual piano accompaniment. That didn't happen again with this piece. And so it was like, okay, sometimes as you're writing, this is the messy, disjointed part, sometimes you're going through it and you're like, okay, I love that. So if I know that I love that, then I'm just going to focus on that right now. And so I did, and I actually came up with an interlude. So at the end of that thing I just played for you, lines and rows in every written page. So I loved that interlude. It kind of gripped me the first time I played it. And I was just kind of tinkering around on the piano. And I'm like, okay, I love that. So I kept it. And so then as the process went on, I didn't have my piano intro at the beginning, but I was just toying around. I'm like, okay, I gotta get to this piano intro, because I was inserting other piano parts to the song. And again, I was just tinkering around. I don't do a lot of tinkering unless I'm writing a song. So it's not like Heather just sits down and tinkers at the piano a lot. It's usually always with, how does this message make me feel? And so then I'll just kind of think about how that sounds on the piano. And so I was doing that, and I came up with this little motif. And again, I was like, oh, that sounds like a very fitting part of this song. And then as I went on, because I did write that into my program, as I went on, I'm like, well, you have to, I'm jumping ahead of myself, because this is like a couple points down. But you need to weave your motifs throughout your piece to make it into one cohesive whole. And so I will come back to this point, so just hold that thought. But all of that to say, it can be kind of disjointed. Let me just really quickly on this point share the other song that I'm currently writing, More Than a Man, the story of Jesus calming the sea, was even more disjointed than this other one. I don't know what the deal was. This doesn't happen to me often, but and I actually haven't revisited the song in a little while, even though I have it largely written out. There was a portion in the melody, and again, like I said, you got to get your melody down first. Like, it has to be a beautiful, captivating melody, and don't really do anything until you got that down. And that usually does apply, but sometimes you just know that the cohesive whole is worthy enough that you just need to get what you have on paper and then revisit it later on. And so I decided to do that with this piece. Let's see here. I'll just play through a little bit of it. Okay, think of the storm on the sea. Okay, so you've got the disciples in the boat. Jesus is sleeping. So it's going to sound kind of restless and kind of like waves, okay? That's kind of what I was going for. Asleep on a pillow, the man slumbered on, while the wind blew and bellowed its uncaring song. The waves had no heart for the sailor's concern. Sorry, I had to move my program here. So troubled men cried out to the man in the storm, "Don't you care?" Okay. So that's where it was. That little part, that little ramp section as we were coming up to the chorus. Don't you care? That's the chorus. But leading up to that, there was parts of the melody that I was not satisfied with. And I'm like, honestly, I'll be very transparent. I am not great with just knowing what chords are just proper. Like I'm not a mathematician when it comes to music. There are friends of mine and probably many musicians out there who know the chordings and all of the ones that are just, they best transition you to the next whatever chord. I'm not great with that. In fact, I just have a lot of happy accidents here on the keyboard, and I trust that it just comes together. Of course, I pray a lot as I sit down at the piano bench. I usually always say, Lord, be with me now and give me the creativity, help me to glorify you in this song. And so I'm very dependent on the Lord and his help during that process. But I don't think mathematically. And so as I was going through that ramp section to get up to the chorus, let's see, where did it go? For the sinner's concern, so trouble never doubts with a man in the storm. Right there. To the man. I think it used to be to the man in the storm. Something like that. And it just, something did not sound satisfying to me, really, at all. And I'm like, there's got to be a chord on this keyboard that just helps lead into that. And so I'm not 100% sure if I found it. I'll keep working on that. Again, this is the one I have not yet completed. And as I mentioned, I send my songs in for musical critique. And so maybe Heather Sorensen, who looks over my pieces, will have an idea for that particular passage, which she has before. She'd be like, oh, that chord doesn't seem fitting, and she'll offer a suggestion. It's pretty rare, but she has done that before, and I'm very grateful that she probably has much more of the musical mind than I do. And so we'll see how it comes out. So anyway, all that to say, the process is messy and disjointed, and it's not always smooth, but you gotta like be in it for the long haul, right? All right, I keep rambling, and it's going to be a very long video if I don't get a little bit more concise here. Use familiar motifs throughout the piece to weave it together. This is the point I had already mentioned. Let me play you an example of that. And this should be a quick point here. In the song in the middle of my story, remember I had... Okay, that's my motif. Okay, so then as I go into the other part, as I enter the song, excuse me, just had lunch. As I enter the song, I want to incorporate that into my piano accompaniment because it'll tie it together. It'd be like, ooh, I love that motif, and then all of a sudden, she never played that motif again. You want to incorporate it into your piece. So let me just show you how I did that. Listen, I'm going to play the intro, and then we go on into the first verse and chorus. You'll have to pardon me. Sometimes I have to speed ahead my music program, so I'll have to just take a break every once in a while. So just give me a moment for that. But you should hear, just listen how I weave this into this first verse, okay? Idea. Sorry again, I was a little disjointed as I had to move my program, and then I have to figure out where I'm at in the music. But I incorporated that into other parts of the song. And did you notice I had previously told you that I fell in love with this interlude? Okay, so I liked it, but then I'm like, uh-oh, I came up with two ideas. And sometimes creative people need to kind of limit their ideas, but I thought, hey, let's weave that motif right into that interlude. So this is how I did it. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so I'm sure you probably caught that. So there are ways, and you really actually need to do this again. You can't have just a really great motif in your intro and then like it disappears. I mean, you can, but it's just not going to really help your song be one cohesive whole. So that's important. Okay, be conscious. This is number, 26, number 3 for today. Be conscious of form. And just briefly, in these two songs, I have one song that is A, B, A, B, A, B. So you got verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. And let me just go back to make sure that is, well, hold on, sorry. Yeah, I know that it was verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. I'm trying to think if I did anything extra at the end. Okay, this is what I did. I thought there was maybe something unique. I did verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. And then I added an additional chorus. And each chorus, by the way, for this particular song has different words. It's different. So I'm assuming it's still the ABABB form, because that's how the music goes, not necessarily how the lyrics go. But as far as this song is concerned, it talks about how the disciples viewed Jesus. So in the verse 1 and first chorus, how the disciples viewed Jesus. Then the second verse and chorus is how Jesus viewed Jesus. He's deity. That's why he says, "Why do you fear, you of little faith?" Okay, so from his divine perspective, that's from his perspective. Okay, so then for the third verse and the third chorus, I switched to kind of an application. Okay, so when you're in a storm, okay, how do you view the man in the boat, kind of a thing. Okay, and so how should that inspire you to have more faith? Okay, and then I tagged on an ending chorus because I wanted to just drive home just a very direct application. And so that was that last ending chorus, just a real soft, tender thing. So that's how the form was for that song. But it is very important that you actually have in mind a form that you are aiming toward. You don't just, I mean, I've heard songs probably and have had songs maybe sent to me where they just wonder and it's like, where's this ship going? Okay, so not every song has to be verse, chorus, verse, chorus. You know, I grew up in the hymn culture. Not every song has to be like that. But you do need form. Okay, so then for the one in the middle of my story is very different. In fact, it's kind of like, I'm sure probably many of you are familiar with my song, Let My Heart Be Quiet. Let My Heart Be Quiet does not have a chorus. It's just is A. I think there's 4 A's. So it's basically, here's your verse 2, verse 3, and verse 4. Okay, and that's totally acceptable and totally fine. But each of those, well, I should say, actually, Let My Heart Be Quiet. There are 4 verses, but on the third verse, I mix up the I mix up the melody. No, yeah, I do. I mix up the melody. So you might consider it to be AABA. That could be what it is. So for this one, I did kind of the same thing. Sometimes when I'm running into a stump with my words, with my lyrics, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't really lend itself to a chorus. I'm not sure that's just how it should be. I will just be like, hey, let's just do verses. And that's exactly what I did for this one. I had A. Let me think here. I had this written out. No, not that. I had A, and then I added on, I guess you could call it a tag ending. It's kind of like a chorus. It drives home the point that I'm trying to make. And so in the middle of our story, that song that I'm working on, it's AAABB. Okay, so there's some continuity, and actually both parts need to somehow sync. They need to feel the same, or at least not the same. They need to feel like they belong together. And so, so that's that. But as you're writing a song, you want to make sure that you have in mind what form you're going to use. Okay, so here's another important part. I did not grow up in the culture that played like playing cards. That doesn't make me super spiritual, not at all. Um, but I heard this phrase used, and I think it has to do with games that you use with playing cards. But I remember somebody telling me you don't want to lay all your cards out on the table at the beginning. Okay, I knew what he meant, but I have thought about that phrase so often because you want to keep here. I specifically said keep back some surprises for later on in the song as the song develops so you can create highlighted moments and unique twists to the melody, to the arrangement in that song. These give interest and emphasis, okay? So, for instance, in the middle of my story, which I think I just played for you, dreary days and sleepless nights are scenes within our story. Joys restored and wrongs made right, the chapters keep unfolding. Okay, when I first wrote that out, because I'm kind of when my brain is on fire with creativity, I want to just put all my ideas into my finale program, and I do. And so I wrote out the melody, of course, first. I got to make sure that I love that. But even as I do that, I want to know which chords I'm using. And sometimes as I'm playing through it, I'll come up with a really unique chord that I'm like, well, I don't want to forget that. So I'll put it in just to make sure I have it and won't forget it. But when I start to actually write out the arrangement, a lot of times I'll copy and paste the melody, first verse melody, just copy and paste it to the second verse, but then insert the new lyrics. So I just know what my melody's doing. And same with the third. But then I will go back to the beginning. I'll be like, okay, how do I want to hold back the interest and the emphasis and the creativity until the song continues to develop? So how I did it in this song is I went back to the first verse and I stripped it down completely to just the melody. You wouldn't believe, well, you would, how beautiful it is just for a simple ladies chorus. I mean, it could be a choir too, for sure, to have just unison at that very beginning. And in fact, that's what I did for this piece. I actually put optional solo, and when we record, it'll likely be a solo at the beginning, but it's just straight. Days and sleepless nights are scenes within our story. And I think it's the same for the next line. And then I'll add just a little bit of interest here. And then this is where I add some interest. The mountain being still and silent. Sorry. Still and silent aches. Now back to unison. They ebb and flow in lines and in rows on every written page. All of that was unison. Okay, so it's actually a struggle for somebody who hears harmony in their heads to be like, nope, bring all that creativity back and release it slowly throughout your song. But trust me, it is well worth it. Because those who are sitting listening to your song, they can't take it all. It's like, giving them water through a fire hydrant. You want to give it to them gradually, and you want the song to have impact where it needs to have impact. So let's move on. So the second verse, I actually move the key up. In fact, every verse I move the key up, and that's intentional. It's almost like a new chapter in this song. And so it goes. The times we love to soon forget. So we change up to D major, and then the vocals go like this. The times we love to soon forget cannot escape the story. Sorry, I'm messing up here. Let me back up. Cannot escape the story. Every bless of youthfulness. So I incorporated a little bit of three-part harmony. I love three-part harmony. If you can't tell already, our little tagline for Forever Be Sure is truth, hope, and harmony. I love harmony. I don't think I could write a song without harmony. I mean, a song isn't a song without harmony, but in the vocals, I love vocal harmony, especially three-part. And it's hard to play. Every bless of youthfulness, the losses and the glow. Sorry. added in some crunchy chords. And crunchy chords usually have 4 notes, not just 3. And that's I love that. So I added more interest. I kind of was pulling out a lot of my cards there for that particular one. And then we changed to a new key. I can't do it from memory. It's going to build. Okay, so I'm building in the accompaniment, but here's the big but here. I am going to bring all of the complexity back, and we're going to go right to unison again. Unison can be the most effective thing to use in your arrangement. I can see that I'm going over my time here. We're at 31 minutes, so I need to cut it short. But let me just wrap up this point. Don't lay out all of your cards at the beginning. And so to finish off this point, I went back to unison. So add a little interest. Back to unison. You use and sing the middle of a story filled with wonders on every page. So then we kind of hop back and forth. Every page on every page is Have you noticed I just drastically slowed that phrase down? Normally it would be, and someday we'll recall, okay? But I went, someday we'll recall. Okay, so another interest. I saved that portion until toward the end of the song. All that to say, don't lay out all your cards at the beginning of the song. Be disciplined to hold some of them back in. All right, before this gets too long, I will have to wait for the next songwriting chat, the last one, and I'm sure there's other points I can mention at that point. It's time for me to get to work on these songs. I have some time this afternoon that I plan to continue on with them. But hey, thanks for listening. I hope these are helpful for you, and obviously I enjoy talking about this. Thanks for hanging in there for 32 minutes, almost 33 minutes. These are getting longer and longer, but it's a pleasure to spend some time with you this afternoon. All right, you guys take care.